Good morning to all listeners and welcome to the WISA studio. This will be the first of I think many discussions we'll have with WISA members and some of the sector stakeholders to discuss relevant topics. The topic of discussion this morning is Regulation 3630, which was promulgated on 30th of June this year. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dewald van Staten and Solomon Makate to the studio with me. Maybe we should have just have you introduce yourself first, Dewald.
Dewald van Staten, and I am representing and here on behalf of process controllers. I am the lead for the process controller division of WISA, so I'm speaking on behalf of process controllers and what this actually means to us on the ground.
Thank you. And Solomon?
Yes, I'm Solomon Makate. I am from the Department of Water and Sanitation, Director responsible for drinking water regulation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome again. Dewald, let's start with you. What makes you excited about Regulation 3630?
Well, first of all, process controllers are the unsung heroes of our modern society. People don't realize what's happening behind the scenes. If you pull the plug, the water is gone. If you open the tap, the water is there. This regulation actually and professionalization provides us with the recognition that process controllers need, and that is long overdue.
Solomon, anything to add on that?
Thank you, Lester. Yes, indeed, I think I share the same sentiment with Dewald that the regulation is a step in the right direction, and it also provides guidance on what qualifications process controllers need to consider, and then also we are also considering the fact that there is new technologies that have been brought into the picture. Therefore, we will start recognizing them through this regulation.
Yes, thank you. The history of process controllers, Dewald, is not a good one, I'm told. Late process controller advocates Tony Bowers and Ronald Brown, who played a crucial role in the process controller history, always used to tell me, and Tony particularly, used to tell me about how delinquent municipal staff were sent to wastewater treatment plants as a form of punishment in the early days. I think since then, process controllers have realized the importance of their jobs and strive to improve their quality. The drop programs, recently reintroduced, provides the opportunity to measure and compare. And this allowed some opportunity for process controllers to improve themselves and receive recognition for the work. The drop program also allowed different plants to compare each other. And like we say, competition improves the breed. Do you foresee a future, Dewald, where we can unroll process controller competitions?
Definitely. There are already some work being done in that regard, and there is already a healthy level of competition, even be it informally, between process controllers. The best process controller for this type of plant, for that type of plant, for different technologies. So definitely, and that would be exciting to see. We have similar programs running as well with international competitions, not necessarily focused on process controllers, but the water skills program. So definitely, there's no reason for us not to roll it out on the ground level with process controllers, and then more specifically with professional process controllers.
Specifically with respect to professional process controllers, there will be an additional layer of accountability now for the sector. Solomon, can you maybe unpack that for us a bit? What would the increased accountability now be within the sector?
What this entails is that, for an example, the regulation will specify that the plants or all the water treatment works, be it is waste or water, they need to be managed by a class 5 process controllers. And then according to this regulation, we actually emphasizing that the class 5, all the plants must be managed by class 5, but then the recognition of a professional process controller also starts at class 5. Therefore, that's where the element of accountability starts in, because now once you professionalize a individual, there will be a professional body that are affiliated to, which also has their own code of conduct for one to comply with. Therefore, the element of complying to code of conduct of a professional body brings in the accountability factor. But then it also brings in, apart from being affiliated to a professional body, you also need to acquaint yourself with relevant skills where you gradually also expose yourself to additional training, so that with the latest development that come into the sector, be it technology or qualification wise, then you are also exposed to them. Then you can be kept abreast with the developments in the sector and the field as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think the three legs of professionalism and in whatever sector, you know, are always number one, standards, number two, continuous professional development, and number three, a code of conduct or ethics which must be complied with. So certainly, Dewald, just sketch a scenario where a class 5 plant manager, a professional process controller, what would they be expected, you know, to do to ensure that you know, standards are maintained?
Well, first of all, just going back to the accountability component, they need to, as with any other professional designation, the professionals need to comply with CPD training. So we need to have them take responsibility for their continuous development. I like using the example of, you wouldn't trust a doctor who qualified 30 years ago, never underwent any other training. It's exactly the same principle. So we need to keep that in mind in terms of that accountability. And process controllers, professional process controllers, need to keep that in mind. They need to be cognizant of that and ensure that they take responsibility and are accountable for their own skills. Tying in with that in terms of what's happening on the ground and just bringing all of that together. That level of accountability can be carried through if there are any incidents where the professional process controller can be held responsible, and something that went wrong in terms of non-compliance on a waterworks, on a wastewater works, can be pinpointed and can be brought back to that specific individual. Like with any other professional designation, there will be consequences. And in severe situations, deregistration can take place, and that process controller would not be eligible to actually fulfill the job that he was appointed to. So there are some severe consequences. This is of course extreme. There are some steps that can be taken instead of that, or before we get to that point. But we need to have that accountability. And we need to move away from the point where process controllers simply say, I'm going to pass the buck, this is somebody else's problem. They need to take responsibility, and the professionalization plays a big part in that.
Right. So that, I mean, so this regulation actually adds, you know, another layer of protection for the public as such.
Absolutely.
No, that's wonderful. Dewald, can you maybe and or Solomon, you know, tell us about the difference between old regulation 2834, draft regulation 813, and then the current regulation 3630. I think most professionals, process controllers in the sector were aware of those old legislation. So maybe just take us from 2834 to 813 and then to 3630. Are there any differences, and what are these differences we need to look at, Solomon?
Okay, thanks for that question, because I think it brings us to where we are today. Regulation 2834, it covered components of standards for the process controllers, which meant what type of training that they needed to be exposed to. But that it also prescribed the number of process controllers that you can employ at a specific plant, be it is a big plant, a small plant, as well as the larger plant. Now, with 813, which is a draft 360. One may just use them interchangeably, is that we started actually going towards the line of saying the plant, actually we are not prescribing the numbers of process controllers that must be employed there. We looked at the highest process controller qualified in a specific shift. So now it meant that all the shifts that are implemented at a plant needs to be manned by a specific process controller with certain level of skill, instead of just say you need to employ this number of process controllers. We say if you've got 3 shifts or 4 shifts, therefore there needs to be this process controller that meets this standard. I think the last point we mentioned, the element of standard, so it's more of also standardizing. But now 2834, it comes from Old Water Act, which is no longer existent. So it meant actually even us as the regulator, it was difficult for us to actually enforce, because it was coming from the 1956 Water Act. So we moved it to Water Services Act, which is the law that is currently enforced in the country. Therefore, we had to align it with the current legislation. But then the major difference as well is the fact that we are, I think we've talked a lot about the professionalization is one major component of it, that the process controllers need to strive towards professionalizing. And then they also a major component that we've added into the regulation 3630 is the recognition of various technologies that we have in the country. For an example, we are moving in the direction where there should be element of water desalination, as we know that we are a water scarce country. So one way of addressing the issue of water shortage in the country, we will have to actually desalinate water for potable use. So then we will have technologies that will have to be classified so that we recognize them as technologies that are deployed in the country, like reverse osmosis, ultrafiltration, those type of technologies. So this regulation seeks to also recognize the level of technology that we could deploy in order to treat water efficiently to protect the lives of our people. But then, apart from water desalination, the element of reuse also comes into play, where now we have to bring in wastewater reuse for potable use with the fact that there is a water shortage in the country. Then we also need to recognize the technology that is deployed to reuse the water. So the major component is therefore, in summary, is professionalization, recognizing the technology, but then also making sure that all the shifts that are implemented at various water treatment works and wastewater works are manned by qualified personnel.
WISA has sent out the regulation to all its members, and obviously it's available on the WISA website, and we'll try and introduce some tables, just to show the different classes and the impact of that. But how long, when, we know it took effect 30th of June, my understanding is a 2-year period of implementation. How does this apply to water sector institutions versus the individual? In other words, the wastewater treatment plant and or the individual working there. Can you maybe just give me a bit of insight into the different aspects there?
Okay, the regulation actually applies to all the water and wastewater treatment works in the country.
Okay,
it's not only, including private as well.
Yeah, so it's all water and wastewater treatment plants.
Yes, so long as there is a water treatment facility, it needs to be registered with the department, and then it needs to be operated by a qualified person to be able to ensure that the water that comes from that particular plant meets the required standard. I mean, as we know that actually a water treatment plant, if you look at it, is a manufacturing plant where the quality there is governed by product quality. From wastewater side is the license limit, and then from the water treatment works is SANS 241. And then the implementation, it will be done in the phased approach, in a sense that we're using a system called IRIS, where the plants needs to be registered on that particular portal, as well as the process controllers themselves, they need to be registered on the IRIS system. So the phased approach is in a sense that the implementation will start with the process controllers as a start, and then also followed by the water treatment works registration. So we are using IRIS for various things in the department, one of them being blue drop and green drop assessment. So the regulation will be implemented in a phased approach as indicated, but then we wouldn't want to find ourselves maybe having distracting the blue drop process. But then as we conclude with the blue drop process, and then we will inform the sector that now the system is open for registration of process controllers and also the water services works. But the sector needs to just take guard. The department will inform them on when certain actions needs to be taken.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that actually they need to wait for 2 years.
Yeah.
If there is additional training that has been attained by a process controller, they need to register it on the system. Then if the plant, for an example, has been upgraded or refurbished with the change of technology, they can actually start updating the information on the system.
Okay, no, good. Thanks for that. Of course, WISA, already has probably around 150 professional process controllers already. So it's certainly, not something new, but something long overdue. Dewald, if you are a process controller that is in charge of a water or wastewater treatment plant and do not meet the criteria, what do you suggest that they do?
We are, from the process controller division side, we're definitely working on various training possibilities, whether it be a bit of gap training, just to fill in those gaps if there is somebody who has the experience, but we just need to upskill, just sharpen those skills slightly. Some gap training is definitely something that we are looking at. And in future, I believe there will be a need for RPL as well, to look at different possibilities for people who never had the formal training. In terms of the professional registration, you need an NQF6 qualification. And a lot of people have not had that possibility, that experience, or that opportunity to go for that type of training, especially in the earlier years. Now, in the regulation, it is specified that even with a basic qualification and sufficient experience, you can register as a Class 5 process controller. So we want to take that into consideration and allow for RPL. Somebody who has the experience, who knows exactly what to do in a plant, who is a professional by all standards, but who never had that opportunity to go for formal training.
Yeah, that's certainly a wonderful opportunity. When it comes to training, I've heard it very often said that, I can't afford the required training, or my employer won't send me for training. Solomon, what's your view on that, especially now with this regulation?
The issue of training is actually, and affordability, it's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
But what the department normally does, I'll speak from the regulator's point of view, is that we have a division in the department that looks at supporting skills development within various water service authorities. So funding normally is proposed to various bodies like your LG-SETA, EW-SETA, and then dedicated for training of process controller. So I think it shouldn't be taken as if it's a one departmental mandate to train process controllers. The municipality can do their part. The department also helps in various ways in terms of training of process controllers, but it's not something that could be ignored on the basis that there is no funding. There are various mechanisms that could be used to support the initiative of training process controllers.
Right. So I think the onus is always, on a professional to ensure that he or she complies. And I understand that there is also a sector responsibility to assist in that when necessary. Dewald, what's your view on that?
No, definitely. It's a bonus, an add-on if the employer plays their part. But ultimately it is about, and we need to make the distinction about the position of a process controller and the individual who is actually a process controller. The terms are quite often used interchangeably. But a process controller can be somebody on a basic level just starting their career in the field, all the way up to a professional process controller. And the professional, as with any other designation or any other profession, needs to take responsibility. So yes, it'll be a nice little bonus if the employers play their part and they can assist. There is of course also a sector engagement, and quite often the CETAs come on board and they fund some of those CPD training processes as well. But it ultimately, the responsibility for CPD training for professional points would lie with the specific individual. When it goes back to the basic training, we will look at the different credits. The regulation also requires certain credits of training to be done per year, and that is more of an overarching on a basic level. So there definitely skills development levies would come into play. The CETAs will have to play a part in terms of that.
No, thanks for that, Dewald. Solomon, very simply, how will Regulation 3630 be enforced?
The department actually has various instruments that we use to regulate the sector. And one of the fundamental one is a water use license, where it will prescribe that a wastewater works or a water treatment works needs to be registered with the department as a license condition, and then will also indicate that the process controllers needs to be registered in that particular facility. So one way of also regulating Regulation 363 will be through the water use license as an instrument. We also have a compliance monitoring initiative now where we go to these plants and actually monitor whether these conditions are being put in place. There's various conditions, but water works classification as well as the process controller classification is one of them. Over and above that, we also have the drop programs, the blue drop certification program as an incentive-based regulation, as well as the green drop certification program. So as a requirement that is assessed along the blue drop and green drop program, we also look into the skills of the personnel that are operating these plants and whether the plant is registered. So the enforcement will be through various mechanisms as I indicated that the department uses to enforce the various regulations that we have promulgated.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. And of course, this professionalization is welcomed. Is the department looking at any other professionalization in the future, or is that still under wraps?
No, that's still under wraps. Yeah.
Thank you. Obviously, we ask all WISA members and anyone interested to send us more questions. We'll try and answer them on the WISA website. And like I said, this is the first of maybe some more question and answer sessions like this. I'd like to end off by maybe asking Dewald any final comments?
No, just that we are very excited and very thankful for this regulation coming into play, being promulgated and being a lawful way. Like Solomon alluded to earlier on, it was difficult to regulate in the past, and it was easy to, I want to say, get away with shortcuts. That's a thing of the past. So water services institutions need to comply, and from a process controller point of view, we believe that this will really boost the image of process controllers in whole. It will create an opportunity for youngsters to also consider the water sector and process controlling as a career path. So we're very thankful and very excited about these new developments.
Oh, fantastic. Solomon, any closing comments from you?
I would like to thank the sector for the support that they've given the department in drafting the regulation. This is not the departmental regulation, but it's the regulation that belongs to the sector. It went through various consultation process. People made comments to shape it to what it is today, and it wouldn't be the regulation that it is if it wasn't through contribution of everyone that has actually given inputs into the regulation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. Final comments from me. Again, we must remember that this is crucial to safeguard the public, and it's essential that every single citizen in South Africa is able to get access to potable water. So thank you once again, gentlemen, and I wish you a wonderful day forward. Thanks.
Thanks for the invite. Thank you so much.